Hi, James. Today we're here at the Department of Indian Affairs at 10 Wellington in Gatineau. I don't know, back in October 30th of 2017, we presented the department with our recognition requisition. And as a result, they suggested that we collaborate on a joint research project to try and fill in any gaps that may be missing in my compilation. So we had agreed to this joint research project, and the department had presented us a list of research corporations who are qualified to undertake such research. And on that, there was a history group that was listed. So we chose the history group, hoping that they would do some good research and not be biased. And we had a meeting to determine what some of the research questions should be, and we came up with several questions, like to identify the indigenous population, the origins, or the ethnic group, at every record of event. And to date, there hasn't been many records of individuals or nations before 1860, although we can determine that our community was present when Philman Wright arrived due to his own land petition and handwritten documents. So it's a primary source where he speaks about encountering a sub-nation that was inhabiting the lands here in Gatineau. And he listed us as hunters and sugar makers, and so there was a lot of secondary reports written about his encounter here. And one thing that was interesting was Dr. Van Cortlandt Wright. He attended the desecration of our Indian burial ground in 1843. When he arrived, he brought a pen and paper, and he stated that the burial ground was situated on a point of land directly in rear of the encampment. So that would show that the encampment continued to exist in 1843, because there we're looking at another primary source where Dr. Van Cortlandt wrote his own notes of his own encounter. So there's been a lot of secondary accounts written about his day and his experience at our burial ground. But what that will do is it'll show that the encampment was there in 1863. So when we skip forward, we start to see maps of the Township of Hull, like in 1863, 4 years before Confederation, or the birth of Canada, where they acknowledged the Indian encampment in Jacques Cartier Park. So our research was to gather all the information and identify each and every individual that we possibly could at every record of event. So today, what we're doing here in February 5th, 2020, is I had received the history group's research report. Now, this is a 47-page written report. Well, I had to examine it and go through it, and I found some inconsistencies as well as factual errors. You can see it was written by Jody Pegg, the research consultant for the history group, and it was dated March 27th, 2019. The research questions for Kana'tso Claims Assessment and Treaty Mechanism Directorate from the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. In here, they came up with a lot of pertinent documentation, but I find that a lot of it is irrelevant, and a lot of the sources, we're going to have trouble with some of the sources. This is a list, or this is the documentation that they have provided as their authorities. So in the report, they'll make references to certain documents, and these documents are here in the collection, whether they're cursively written from the 1900s or annual reports from the Department of Indian Affairs in the 90s. These are mostly related to the Indian community that was occupying this territory upon European arrival or settlement. Anyways, so today we're going to discuss with CATMD, which is the Canadian Assessment Treaty Mechanism Directorate team that was put together by Canada. They're underneath Joe Wild, the Deputy Minister for Indigenous Affairs, who works for Carolyn Burnett, who works for Justin Trudeau. So we are dealing right now with the head officials in this department related with the Aboriginal affair that we have before the table. And now, the thing that makes this so conflicting is that there is already a claim for the Chaudière Falls with the Algonquin of Ontario. And this information is contrary to a lot of the history that's being taught in the institutions, whether they be universities. In the history report, we had discovered that this very Department of Indigenous Affairs have in the past misrepresented our documentation, and that has created a lot of confusion in today's, we try to create a narrative for the history and the heritage of the territory. Not only that, the department has in the past destroyed medical and death records that pertain to our existence or our community after infectious diseases had came through. There's a lot of these primary sources, or not primary sources, but a lot of the secondary sources have been written by other research consultants, and what has happened is they are going to sources that have committed fraud. Like Lucien Brault, he's a historian. Well, he labels us, he says when the Eustache family left the Indian community in Hull, that we went off to Kitigan Zibi, and that the Algonquins were no longer to be seen again. And that's very convenient for them, but the Eustache family were Mohawk. They know us as Mohawk. But misrepresenting our origins while you're giving a history report, and then the universities are going to allow these narratives to educate their students, then it's going to create chaos when it comes to truth. So I know there's a big call for truth and reconciliation, but no one and nowhere can you have reconciliation without the truth. So this is the agenda. The agenda right now is to gather the facts, to organize them, and to write a narrative, because upon a standard of review comes correctness. So we're going to review what it is that there is to review, and if there's any corrections to be made, we will correct them, and we will be coming out with a narrative regarding the Indian community that was situated at Jacques Cartier Park. And it's very important that they acknowledge our ancestors who lived there and honor them whether they're doing land acknowledgements, for example, right here at the Museum of Civilization. It's important to include us as we suffered on these shores of smallpox. We quarried the Chaudière Falls for flint. We mastered the flint. We made arrowheads and tomahawks, skinning tools, pipes, and all sorts of things here. So it's an important day for the truth. Where we go from here, I don't know. Our expectations are to be included in Canada's political, economic, and social development, as our development was arrested in 1901, and we have a right to our identities and our cultural integrity. There's my goal for today's meeting in Canada.